Okay, good deal. Well, welcome everybody. I'm Rob, and I come from a faraway land called HawksHaven. Actually, it's just over in East Sela. And what we're doing is we're creating a model of transformation, and both of our environment and of the individual. And so I didn't have PowerPoint, but I did have a method of making a little short video that I'd like to share this morning. And it's going to be about 8 minutes. We're going to talk a little bit during it, and should be bringing that up here shortly. And so basically what we're doing is we're shaping the landscape so it absorbs water and we create a healthy environment by holding water in the land. And being that most of us, including our bodies, our land, everything is mostly water, it's really important for us to manage it in a certain way. And our thoughts and our actions help create our bodies in a certain way. And yoga is a great way of helping us to transform ourselves individually. And when we transform ourselves individually, we're recognizing what we can control. And we can control the way we are. And we can't control our environment too much, but we can use our intentions to shape our physical environment. And so we'll be demonstrating some of the pictures here. Oh, we're going to have to back up on that. So you can just go right back to the beginning. So HawksHaven, suitably named because we have hawks that are flying over the top quite frequently. Aerial battles with ravens over territory. That's Jake and some of our chickens. So HawksHaven is a permaculture-based homestead. And we're using permaculture principles and methods of sustainability to create an environment that is giving back to us every bit that we're giving to it. And so Haas, he's one of our mascots and helpers here. Can you pause it just for a moment? Mm-hmm. He was walking amongst some sunflowers that were planted. And these are all the elevations have been changed. And we're just growing lots of food, lots of seed, food for the animals, food for people, and food for thought. One of the foods for thought will be coming up here shortly. It's the Labyrinth. And we've got a hillside that we're creating into a labyrinth. And so there's mazes to walk back and forth, and there's things to find, and there's dead ends to find. And sometimes we come into life and we experience these dead ends. And maybe they're addiction, or maybe they're a relationship that didn't work out for us. And so what we do is when we recognize those dead ends, we can take and we can recognize the path that led to that dead end also had choices at some point in time. And so when we return to those choices that we had previously, we can make different choices, or we can just recognize different options. And we can go ahead and continue to play. So the labyrinth is every bit as much important for our mind as it is for our bodies and our pathway through life. And so this is some of the transformation that happens. And I don't know how well we can see it, it's pretty light, but a bunch of trails were cut in. And all the trails are leading to different things. And if it was a little darker in here, it'd be better, but I guess it's best witnessed in person. Good thing it's only about a 15-minute drive outside of town. And we've had several people who have come up and experienced what we've got going on. Right here it's indicating some of the mulching that we're bringing to the land. So far I've brought about 4,000 bags of leaves up to the property. And I like to do a lot of my stuff barefoot. It gets us in touch, gets us grounded. And so this is after one of the trips, in the fall, people are raking up their leaves and I come and pick them up and throw them all over the ground again. So this is where we're starting yoga. Haas is demonstrating a great spinal twist. And I'm demonstrating some inversion down on the beach. This here is another transformation. I call this, if you can pause for a moment. This is a transformation, this is like a transformation yoga. I call it play. It's pixelated landscape / lifestyle and yoga. And what we do is I recognize there's a section that I would like to change. And it might represent physical, the property, or maybe it's internally. Maybe it's a thought process that I hold. And so I recognize that with a little bit of action, you can take something less than desirable and you can turn it into something desirable. So we can continue to play. There's a few more demonstrations of this, of taking something that looks a little chaotic, adding some recycled materials, and we're building stairs. This project's only halfway done. But another one here that's pretty chaotic, nothing really going on. But using the same materials and resource in just an hour and a half or 2 hours of time, I or anybody else, you can shift our experience with action. And so what I recommend when I have private students come up is that they recognize a piece of chaos and they take a picture of it. And then using yoga principles, we make things in our life more difficult than they need to be, and so that way everything else in life just seems that much easier. And so maybe I'll be doing this from a planking position, or I'll be doing it from inversions, or I'll be using my body weight as resistance in order to make that job that can be done in an hour and a half or 2 hours easily, maybe make it a lot more difficult. So I'm burning up a lot more energy. But, so I'm gaining as well as the land. So if we go ahead and continue. Here's another one. This is right outside on the west side of my house. And just building rock walls, and they'll be extending around. And it's always about creating gardens. It's about creating efficiency and recognizing opportunities in our life where things aren't what we desire them to be, and we're being given the opportunity to create in our lives what we desire. So, go ahead and continue. This is a project that I've been using recycled tires. And in this project here, we used about 1,700 tires. And so I built a little jig. That's keeping the uniformity is important when you're using recycled materials, or people will look at it and say that's too chaotic. But packing them full of dirt, each of those automotive tires becomes about a 200-pound brick. And so this wall has been in place for going on about 9 years now. And so if you can continue the show here. We're going to show some of the transformation this wall has done. So we started getting just random grasses and stuff growing on it, and then throwing some seed and some water, it becomes a living wall that produces food. This is another spot here. You can back up just a little bit, not all the way.
I don't know if I can.
If you hit, oops. Yeah, right there. So. And one more. So this is what's called a wallapini, or the principles. And so that's a 40-foot ocean cargo box, and we're about 9 feet into the ground that we've excavated out. And now we're using semi-truck tires as the building blocks for the walls. So we'll be building those up about 4 feet, coming back 4 to 5 feet, and then going up again, and bringing those up to the level of the top of the box. And then we'll be doing a hoop house over the top. And so getting into the ground helps hold and stabilize temperature. So we'll actually be able to grow plants that can't typically grow in this area. We'll be able to grow them, citrus fruits, avocado trees, stuff like that, because we'll be able to maintain a temperature above freezing here in central Washington. So these principles are being used elsewhere. Some of them on a smaller scale, some of them on a bigger scale. But Iceland is actually using some of these principles to grow tomatoes, and they're exporting produce from areas that normally wouldn't be so productive. So I'm going to continue the slide. This is just some paint that I had left over, and I took the corner of a shop, and something to inspire people to just smile, don't worry, be happy. That's the way life is supposed to be. This is a bat box made out of pallets and plates. So another recycled project. And when we increase the bat populations in the area, if you could pause that again for me, you're reducing the number of insects that you're experiencing. So I've got a couple of little ponds, and we've got a fire pit, and it would really be kind of burdensome if you're always being bothered by the bugs. So you promote the predators of the insects, and you have a better, more desired experience. So this is the first time that I was sweating, As I was helping a neighbor remove some willow trees, I was up in a bucket truck and we're getting rid of some willow trees. And one of the best things to do with willow trees that I've learned, is going to continue, is building a sweat lodge. And so John Jack, he kind of taught me some of the principles of basic sweat lodge construction, and we're going to continue. And so we've just taken some of the branches and started tying them together, weaving in the smaller ones, and creating a structure that is a natural structure. And you can insulate them, you can do all sorts of things once the frame is up. This is a short video showing some of the transformations that have happened in other places in the world using these permaculture principles. And most of the principles are terracing, mulching, and planting intentionally. And planting diversity. Luckily, I've got a lot of shovel time, and that helps me with not having to pay for a gym membership. But I also luckily have resources like heavy equipment available to move a lot of material. And I've been doing that as well. Over the last 17 years that I've had this property, you can barely recognize what was happening in 2001 to what's happening today. I guess you can't quite hear that. Can we turn that up a little bit?
Absorbing the water quickly, but releasing it slowly, holding it to the land, is going to promote a lot of desired change in the world.
This is a hugel culture ditch that we've got several of. They start out about 4 feet deep, 3 feet wide. We're piling organic material into the trenches, and we're cutting the trenches across the hillsides, and that helps to hold water to the land. So we're working as the beaver, the natural hydrological engineers of the land. We're intentionally creating what they've tried to do for some time. Back in the 1800s, it was really popular to have a beaver skin hat, and so unfortunately, many of our engineers were sacrificed for fashion. So we're working intentionally. We've got an ad on Craigslist, and this is one of the people that have donated some of their yard waste and some of the materials that they've brought up.
All sorts of organic material in these trenches.
So they do a great job of stomping it down and eating up what they're finding beneficial, and then they eat coming in one side and they fertilize going out the other. And so it works really well for building these nice organic trenches. That basically what these are going to do is once we get them full, we'll be pulling the dirt back over the top, creating an anaerobic environment that slows the decomposition of the material. So what happens is every time the water comes into it, it absorbs the water quickly, acting like a sponge, but then it'll release it slowly into the environment. And so these are hugelkultur beds that have, a demonstration of them, that the organic matter is decomposing slowly, is releasing micronutrients into the environment. This is indication of some condensation generators. These are stacked rocks. And just the principles of stacking rocks. At nighttime, the rocks cool, and in the morning, the air temperature around the rocks warms up before the rocks do. So they're naturally condensating the humidity right out of the air and dropping it into the soil. And so in areas that we don't have a lot of irrigation capacity, we can be doing other principles that allow nature to provide that for us. And actually, some of the driest deserts in the world, they're using principles like the condensation generators and condensation curtains to capture humidity in the air and direct it into producing food. And when we can produce food in the driest deserts in the world, there's no reason that we can't be producing food anywhere that's intentionally watered. And with food localization, we remove the necessity, we remove the dependence of centralized food supplies. And we notice that like down in Venezuela, they've got a monetary collapse, and so people are struggling because they're still going to the stores for the food. But if we shift that phonetical or that phonetic location to the source, instead of the stores, we all thrive. And when we can do that locally happens everywhere, globally. And so, like what I've been doing with HawksHaven is I've been learning globally and then acting locally. And that's where I found I've got influence is, I've got several Facebook pages and, so I've got influence all over the world through that. But the action happens when we actually take our physical presence here and we do change in our communities. And we get others to do the same thing. So we can go ahead and continue on the slide. This is some terrace gardens I'm putting in, and each of these mounds is intentionally irrigated. I've got like a manifold system that we can feed off of our well. And that's got 3 tiers. I've been mulching and adding fertilizer and nutrients to the soil for a few years now, and it's starting to be quite productive. This picture is from last year. And we've got the ditch on the other side. It's okay, you can keep it going. That's just for composting. So we dump a lot of compost in there, and we're filling it in. We're using the rocks that we'd excavated out as landscape resources. This project is, I believe this one is in India. And what they've done is they've kind of perforated the landscape that allows individual little pools of water to form and soak back into the land rather than the trenches like what I've done. So, and once I saw this, I was like, oh, well, that's a good idea too. So there'll be some implementation of this design as well onto the property. And thanks to Sandy, there are some, and James, I can't remember what kind, there's some pokey plants that we were donated, and we've got them placed into the landscape. So I'd like to thank everybody for that. This is another indication of landscape that's been shaped intentionally using just the terracing methods and intentional planting. And just by terracing, just by holding that little bit of water to the land, we allow things to really start growing. Once the snow falls, we have proof. If we could turn that up, please.
And it's collecting from this valley here.
We've got recesses and diversion.
It settles in here. And if there's any overflow, this little land bridge that we have here, it flows across the land bridge through the little spillway, I guess. And I'll go kind of fast here. It dumps down into this seepage pit. And right now there's, I'm guessing probably about 7 or 8 feet of water in the middle. And then it just kind of graduates up. And you can see this is the first year that this one's in existence.
Now, when this one reaches capacity, my rough estimations is this is holding back about 100 to 120,000 gallons of water of surge prevention. So instead of it just coming onto the land and then running right downhill and filling up the rivers and flooding low-lying areas like we experience in the spring, we're holding water to the land. And if we can do this all the way through the valley, we're actually going to eliminate much of the erosion, the brown rivers that we see in the spring. That's all the silt coming from the mountains and flooding right into our lower valleys. That's filling up the riverbeds. Here we're demonstrating just once we can work into the valley, we'll be cutting trenches across these hillsides to slow the water down and increase the retention time to the land. So we're doing one of the largest permaculture projects in the Northwest.
What property do you have?
I have 16 acres right now that I'm able to work. I just sold off 8 acres. But I'm in the middle of thousands of private acres. And so I've already got landowner permission once we can get the support to be doing this with heavy equipment. That they would like their landscape shifted as well. So other models have taken, in less than 1 decade, with a lot of people working towards it, they've been able to hold enough water to the landscape, and they hold it up high, that it recharges the aquifers to a point that springs start flowing that haven't flowed for hundreds of years. And there's already other models that are demonstrating this. There's one down in Texas, And I think they've been working on it for about 7 years now. But they've already been able to get springs to start flowing year-round that were where the stream beds were only flowing with runoff. So this is another one of the depressions on another land bridge that I put in so I could access another portion of the property. This one here holds back, I'm guessing, between 60 and 80,000 gallons. It comes down, it's about 12 feet deep on this north end, and then it graduates up. And we get a waterfall up in the canyon, but only in the spring when we get the melt off. Here's one of the pieces of equipment that we're lucky enough to use. It accomplishes a lot more than just a shovel alone. So these are some of the fruits of the Labyrinth. You know, we're growing things on the land that weren't growing before. We've got a lot of berries. I'm planting fruit trees. We're planting diversity. Anything that'll grow, we're just getting it going and letting it spread out. That's sunflowers, and we've got some tomatoes there. And the love that we've given to the land is giving back. It's being a reflection. This is some garden or some cooking sage, and there's some mullein. And we've got some, behind that there's like a little in-ground pond that seems like we have 5 different bee colonies, honeybees. And so they have places to get their water, and they kind of love pollinating. So we've given them as much stuff to pollinate as possible. You get mushrooms growing in the desert. And it's with the mulch. Mulch is like a blanket to the land, so we're holding that moisture in that was normally evaporating off. Some of the bee colonies are shown there. This is some alfalfa in the spring, so we're growing a lot of our own goat food. I don't know what that one is. I think it's a tiger lily. I don't know. Anyway, this is just showing that permaculture is ready for us all to jump on board. Permaculture fixes the land. Yoga fixes the individual. Yoga is a union, mind, body, and soul. We're guided more by our spiritual connection than our ego impressions of our environment when we're very recognizing of now. And now is when we have power. If we're worried about tomorrow, we're focused kind of in anxiety. If we're focused on yesterday, it might be depression. But right now, we have power. And right now, I'm going to open it up to any questions that anybody has about what I'm doing out in HawksHaven. Last time I was here, there were some questions, and we kind of ran out of time. But we have, I think, another 5 or 10 minutes of this part. Yes, Jackson?
Are you networked with some of the other projects in like this state or this area too? You get ideas and get together and do stuff like that?
There's a couple permaculture pages on Facebook, but so far it seems that people haven't been in a collective effort yet. I am working with the Yoga Collective on that aspect of it. I've been teaching there for about 3.5 months now, just 3 or 4 classes a month. But and then I offer tours up at HawksHaven. So I've had actually you've come out. Schwarup's come out. Lucinda's been there. James and Sharon. Lori. So we are making an awareness, and I've got a Facebook page or several Facebook pages, and I've also got a YouTube page that I've been sharing a lot of information on. So right now I'm trying to get it as much of the projects to at least where they're capable of being seen by other people. Right now, some of them are just a vision in my head, and I want to get them at least partially manifested. And then that way, when more people come together, we'll be able to really we'll be able to really see change. When people come together, that's how it happens. Yes, Paul?
I want to go back to the shipping container.
Okay.
When you were building the walls and you were building a hoop house.
Yeah, there'll be a hoop house over the top of it.
On top of the shipping container.
Yeah.
And then you will plant on top of it under the house.
Yeah, under the hoop house in that area, it's kind of called like a wallopini. It's like a sub-terra garden So you're getting a bit more of the earth mass, and also we'll be having I'll be digging a large hole straight down to have like a water tank.
So you're just using the shipping container like a retaining wall?
Yeah, actually the shipping container is going to be one of the walls. It's going to be the north wall. And inside that I've got some IBC containers, which are like 400-gallon water tanks. And I'll be storing fish, some crawfish. We'll be growing aquaculture in there, and using the water that they pollute to water the plants, and then we'll be giving them the fresh water from the well. And so we're creating a sustainable environment there, because we'll be growing fish and crawfish and stuff as a food resource, but also they're producing the fertilizer necessary for watering plants. So we don't really bring any chemicals onto the property. I don't even have to buy fertilizer. Our goats and chickens, they do a great job of helping me create organic material into good fertilizer.
And the hoop house will be, the purpose of it will be shade, or?
Actually, I'll be doing two layers of plastic on it, and so it'll be like an insulating barrier.
Way warm in there.
Yeah, and then with the ability of rolling up the sides in the summertime to allow good airflow.
And it will be made out of sticks and twigs and?
No, that will probably be made out of pipe, like structural steel tubing, because we're going to be spanning about 42 to 44 feet. And I think that my roof height is going to be around 26 to 28 feet on the inside of the greenhouse. So we'll actually be able to be growing trees, inside the greenhouse, and they'll not have unlimited potential, but a 25 or 30 foot ceiling space is pretty good for most trees. Yes.
What you're talking about is really interesting to me. I'm wondering if you can translate some of what you're doing to things that those of us that have, for instance, large yards.
Oh, absolutely.
Can you talk about that? Some of the things that we could do in our yard.
So grass is a garden in itself. Unfortunately, it is a monoculture garden that many of us, we pay somebody every week or every 2 weeks to mow it down and haul it away. There have been some nonprofit little corporations that have formed, and they're kind of like a grass into gardens entity. And so what other people have done is they've come into people's yards and they ask, can we use your yard? And if you'll water the garden, we give you 10% of everything that is produced from the garden. The rest of it takes care of the volunteers' labor and the participation of building these gardens elsewhere. And what they do is they sell the produce at like farmers markets. And what they sell at the farmers markets allows them to buy new plants and the dirt and the materials to build raised beds elsewhere. Some of the landscape in our towns and cities has been polluted. So you definitely want to make sure you're getting good dirt to grow your produce out of. So the raised beds, or at least growing food in the perimeters of your yard. It makes it to where food's available for you whenever. And a lot of the berry plants, they keep coming back. And so you plant those, and you're actually growing money on trees, because you're not spending the money at the store for your produce. Yes?
What kind of resistance do you get from neighbors or county, like that hoop house? You don't need permits or anything for that?
Everything's temporary, and so I haven't asked for that. Sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than beg for permission, and so sometimes we just do things and hope for the best. I'm doing a lot of things that are not normal, and so once they become normal and people recognize the benefits from it, I think some of our regulations will be changing. But sometimes we have to have a model to show what it can be, even outside of regulation. So, okay. I'll be available after service if anybody else has any questions. We are coming up to our time frame. So, thank you very much.